I find this younger generation hidden behind their iPads and laptops and communicating with text messages, and I think more personal contact is required. I think young people getting in the industry should get out and go to as many organizational meetings that they can and shake hands with as many people as they can. I think it's invaluable that they do things like that.
Welcome to the Land Department Podcast, the state of land and energy as we see it.
We've got the man, Mr. Tom Dudley, today with us.
We sure do.
Yeah, it's really excited to have Tom here today. And I've had the benefit of a career of exposure to Tom, but the opportunity to showcase, what Tom's done and starting a company that's now been in business over 40 years is huge. And I really think, the land community would enjoy listening to what he's got to say. So Tom, thank you for joining us today. I look forward to walking through your career and everything you've done for Dudley Land Company and the industry as a whole.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate having an opportunity to do this.
Yeah. First podcast, Tom?
It is my very first podcast. I can assure you, I've never done this before.
No, it's great. We're glad to have you.
We might read a monster, Khalil. He made
for you all today.
Yeah,
we might create a monster, man. Khalil,
yeah.
he may go the podcast trail after this. He might love it so much.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure it'd be more successful than our podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Yep.
So let's jump in and talk about how you got in the industry, Tom. How did you start? What year was it? What prompted you to get in the land business?
Well, I started in 1974. I was 24 at the time. A young guy. Gentleman hired me that I had known for a long, long time, and asked me if I wanted to be a landman. And I didn't even know what a landman was. I had no idea one. There are people today, if you told them what a landman was, they have no idea what it is. But I did start off young, and I was thrown into the courthouse with very little experience that as I look back, was the wrong way to go. But I had a real estate background, so I had some common knowledge about conveyancing and things of that nature. But so for about 7 or 8 years, I did a lot of traveling from courthouse to courthouse. I worked pretty much a 3-state area, Oklahoma, lots of Kansas at the time, some Texas. Ran a lot of courthouse records in the courthouses back then. We would go into the courthouses and pull books and slam them on the counter and read the documents, make interpretation of the deeds and of that nature. And today I know it's done completely different. In fact, I do access some of the records myself and find it pretty interesting, pretty good source of information. But I did that till 1980, at which time I left the person I was working for, just because I thought that I could do it better. He did some things that I've changed up, and one thing I changed up was he would pay me when he got paid, and that didn't work out very well for me. Not on my own. In fact, most brokers back then, they paid when they got paid, and it could be abused greatly, and I felt it was. So when I opened up my doors, I got a lines of credit, and so I made a point to pay my labor every other week. Well, that was a big thing back then, and it provided security for a lot of these landmen that I didn't care for the irregular pay, and it helped me hire a lot of good landmen because they knew that they were going to get a steady paycheck. So that was one of the reasons I left, and it was a one-man operation for quite a while. I'm wearing my accounting hat. I'm wearing my public relations hat. I'm out in the courthouses pulling books. I'm going to landman's meetings, looking for new business. It was a lot more than I had bargained for. I can assure you. I was working 7 days a week for years, and I've looked back at it, and really the first 20 years of being in the land business before I moved to Texas, I was probably working 70 hours a week for several decades.
Yeah.
Jeez.
More than more than I would recommend today. I know that newer generation has taken a much smarter approach to life, but
Gosh, I can't imagine, I guess what you had about 6 years of experience when you started and went on your own. I couldn't imagine when I was a 6-year landman doing that, knowing what I know now. I mean, that's quite the leap to do it. As you mentioned, you didn't know what you were getting into until you were there.
I did it out in the sense, but I had a lot of contacts by then. I was always involved in the local association, so I know a lot of people, and a lot of people knew me, and so that it wasn't like I just went out on my own, not knowing anybody. So
Yeah.
I had some, I had some advantages there that a lot of landmen don't get involved in the local organizations and unwilling to get out and meet people, and they just box themselves in. So anyway, and I had an opportunity. I gave me a leg up on other companies, people.
You took advantage of it. I think, Tom mentioned that, you don't have anything unless you've got good people. And I think that's always been it from day one that I've started with Dudley, years and years ago. That was always central to what we did. And I think there's always been a very good appreciation of the contract landmen at Dudley. And we always made a point to pay our people. I mean, that's a huge deal. And I think we're respected in the industry, and Tom was a big part of that because it was central to what he felt was important to the company, both employees and the field folks. So that's a legacy. I mean, gosh, that's 43 years now, and it's a big deal on our company today.
Tom, that's got to feel so good starting your own company. I mean, obviously your name's even on it still, but some of the cultural values and the mission that you have for the company still exist to this day. And to think back to 1980 when you started, you didn't realize the amount of pressure and responsibility and stress that come with starting your own business. When did you feel like Dudley Land Company was really becoming more than a one-man show and that it would potentially live on for decades?
Well, that's a good question.
I don't know if you ever really
Maybe never felt it.
I had a great partner, Tom Havenstrike.
Hmm.
And once I was able to find somebody that shared the same beliefs that I did, I was able to turn over responsibilities to another person. We were able to split up responsibilities, and it took a big load off of me. And when we did that, the company started to grow.
Mm.
I was just kind of held back. I just didn't have the personnel that had the same desires that I did. I had plenty of people that wanted to, well, let's call it work day to day and go home at night, but it really required more than that. And the partner I brought on had the same desires that I did. And it was at that time that the company started to expand, and I felt much more comfortable about the direction.
Yeah, when that happened, Tom, I'm thinking back, when that happened, and I was a young guy in the company. I remember that very clearly. And that was about the time that we really started rolling out the databases and the comms product that we use even till today. Was that something that, when you were able to delegate some responsibility, what was that? I mean, what did you take up? What was your passion at that point? What did it open you up to doing?
Yeah, let me kind of backtrack on that a little bit, but when I kind of got into automation and I saw the need for database management. And I remember this to this day, that for you to send a lease out, it was a 7-step process. You had to write the name down 7 different times, the legal description 7 times. They go from drafts to leases to ownerships to a letter that went in the mail. Like there were 2 others, I can't remember what it was. And I said, this is insane to do it 7 times. So the database management was huge. And through the years, we finally refined it. And when we got into, you could put your data in one time and generate 7, at minimum 7 different reports. And with that, our administration costs just went way down, and everybody else's administration costs were still real high. It gave us a big edge in just cost of what we were charging our services by reducing administrative costs and at the same time improving performance. That was a big deal. That really allowed us to really explode. And as the oil patch was maturing and we were getting into, in the year 2000s, let's say, we were getting into the shale plays or horizontal fracking. Companies weren't just doing a little section or 2 sections block. They were doing a half a county. They were doing counties at a time, and they needed somebody that could pick up, accumulate all this information and present it in reportable formats. We had that capability. And with that, we got some huge, giant projects by some very big players. And that is when I knew we were really on the cuff of really having a company that had some staying power at that time.
Yeah. And Dudley was one of the first ones. I mean, he was definitely a pioneer, and I'm not saying this just from inside the company. I still to this day get, told when I run into, and now they're VPs of land, they're at the end of their careers, and they say, like, you guys were the first. Dudley was the first to really take advantage of databases and develop it. I mean, Tom created one of the first land programs for managing leasing projects. And he was right there at the beginning. And that groundwork we've built on for 20 years since. And so you're right, Tom. Thinking back, that's probably the time that it really made you feel like we got something, and we can replicate it. And that was the biggest thing too. You could replicate the process because you had a constant. And it was a big deal.
Brent, let me tell you a story. And I look back at that now that I think about that, but here I am. We got this idea of this automation, but now you got to go sell it. And I mean, most companies, some didn't even have computers at that time. But I remember taking the large monitors that we used to have, the big monitors and big computers. I had one of those large compact, looked like a big suitcase, compact computer. And I literally put that on a plane, and I would go through the airport on a little dolly, and I would be in downtown Houston, Texas, going from office to office, setting up. And back then we used those little plug-in modems, dial-up modems, that I would dial into our database in Oklahoma City. And I would access data that we had there, and I'd show them what we were doing. And I probably set up at least 100, 120 different companies and showed them what we were doing at that time. And personally, I thought it was very impressive, and so did a lot of those people. And we landed some business from all of that. And it really opened up the doors and got us a name at the time. But I do laugh about thinking about going through the airport with, a monitor in a box. And I didn't think anything of it at the time.
Yeah, what may or may not be an explosive device.
Yeah, back then you weren't me. But anyway, I did that. I had never told you that, but I did that for, golly, that was back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Wow. So you were into it even then. Because I came in with the company in 2004, and that's when we rolled out kind of the leasing program where you could, generate lease documents and lease packets from all this information that we had gathered in the field. And that's kind of the next step, was to bring it full circle. So that was my first exposure to it as a field person. And that was, I remember that time, it was a big deal. It was a lot of training that we did for field landmen to actually use the program, because it was so new. So many of them had never used a database. They were filling out reports in Excel and things like that. But it was a big effort. It was a major effort at the time to get everybody up and running, but it just allowed for repeatable results. It was a game changer for us.
Tom, as you were, you've mentioned some of the stories that have gone through those first 2 decades, but there were a lot of ups and downs during that time in the industry. What did it take to overcome some of those challenges that were faced in the land industry and the energy industry at large?
Yeah, we had a lot of bad times in the oil patch, and I would be knocking on a lot of doors looking for the next job. And I remember I had lunch with a guy, and he was telling me that it was so true. At the end of the day, I would be talking to people that just wear me out because how bad things really were in the oil patch. And I decided I wasn't going to hang around these people with all these negative aspects, because all they did was just take me down with them. And I had to have a positive attitude. And so I made a conscious effort to, be around people that had positive attitudes. That helped me move forward. I had some banks that were willing to kind of get behind me and stay with me at the time. And we'd been in the business long enough that banks realized that, then I was good for my word, and we paid our bills. I have to admit, there were a couple of times that I wanted out of the business. It got so bad. But unfortunately, I didn't find another job. Not that I didn't look at it twice, perhaps the thought of moving on to a different career, but I just stayed in there. When things got really ugly, I rolled my sleeves up and I went back into the field and started pulling books just like I began, and just started over and just grew it again. And we probably did that 4 or 5 times. If it got ugly, I'd go right back to the field and do what all our contractors did, and built it back up again. And then, like I mentioned, there's about 2000, when the shale plays broke loose, is when things really turned around.
And even
look back, and we were able to grow. And when we opened our office in Texas, it gave us some diversification, and that was a real blessing to have 2 offices. And then we had 3 offices, so we had more and more diversification. I don't know if I answered your question completely. I look back at those ugly times, and I know I spent a lot of time away from family at the time, and I can look back. I'm not happy about that, but that's what it took to keep the doors open. That's when
I think sometimes you if you're in it long enough, you're going to have the ups and downs. And I think when you're in the downs, you don't realize what you're doing to get out of it, but you can look back once you've come out of it and say, wow, we're still landmen. And that was something that was always instilled upon us early on, was like, you're a manager now and you're coordinating and running things now, but you're still a landman. And when times get bad, you got to go back to being a landman and make sure that, you can get the work done and still be the one to do it and not be dependent on someone else to do those things. So it's positive attitude is also a big thing. I think if you're going to stay in this business, you have to be relentless. And you can't get down. Tom has nailed it. When things are bad, everybody's singing the blues, and man, you can get in a bad headspace when things are slow if you surround yourself with those kind of people. So keeping a positive attitude, keeping a workmanlike attitude is looking back what gets you through those things. It's like, well, this is what's in front of us, and we've got to tackle it, and we've got to work harder than the next guy, and be the best option. And I think the imprint that Tom left on the company lives today with that attitude. It's, stay positive, work hard, and be the guy who can still do the work, and make sure that your quality and your product, when the work does come and it's slow, boy, you knock it out of the park, may have no reason to go anywhere else. So that's a big thing. That's a lasting culture in our company.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, for the listeners that may not know you or had a chance to interact with you, I'm going to read a little bit of the mission statement that you set for Dudley Land Company. And I'd love to get a little bit more perspective on why you came up with these values as a part of the Dudley culture. So started off, our first responsibility is to the clients who use our services and products. To meet their needs, we must offer the very highest quality of service and products of the greatest possible value. Their needs must be serviced accurately and with a sense of urgency, thereby gaining and holding their respect and loyalty. We are also responsible to our employees and the contract landmen who work with us. Each must be treated as an individual. They should feel free to make suggestions and complaints. We will respect their dignity and recognize their merit. I'm going to go on to the next part. We must provide competent management. Our actions must be just, ethical, and with a sense of urgency. Initiative and creativity will be fostered by giving leaders freedom of action in attaining well-defined objectives. Next part, we must provide opportunities for our employees to grow and succeed. We must innovate and experiment with new ideas. We must learn from our mistakes and constantly strive to be better. You finish it with, business must make a sound profit. Reserves must be created to provide for adverse times. When we operate to these principles, we should realize a fair return. I think anybody who hears that, as a business owner, I kind of get chills reading it, but I think anybody who hears that, they feel like that's something that's honorable to live by. And I think that you did a great job of instilling that into that Dudley Land Company. Where did these aspirations and these goals of, supporting employees and contract landmen and running a profitable business that has a fair return, where did that come from? What instilled that in you?
Like I mentioned earlier, that some of it came from past experiences that I had with a previous employer or person I worked for, that I wanted to do things completely different than the way he did it. And I thought anybody that was working for Dudley Land needed to be respected. You needed to hear if they had input about something that could be done better or something that they didn't like. It needed to be heard. Didn't have to necessarily agree with them, but you had to give them an opportunity to voice their opinions or grievances. And I think when you did, you gave them, you knew that they were listening to you, or I was listening to them, and that their remarks were heard. And in many cases, we implemented change when necessary. I couldn't cover all the bases, and you have employees that are working on a project or something time and time again, and they develop better ideas than I could come up with because they deal with it. You had to listen to what they had to say. Try to think of what you asked me, and that maybe heck covers the employee side of it, but I just had a lot of respect for the people that help make a living for me, and I wanted to help. I wanted to help provide for them as much as I could. I didn't realize when I went out on my own how many people relied on me for them to get a paycheck each week.
Yeah.
That was a real eye opener to me.
Yeah, and the stress is real. You feel it.
Yeah.
It weighs on you, and that's what causes you to work the long weekends and to take the trips with the compact computer and go get some sales to keep food on the table for not just you but for your employees.
One of the negative things that I would say about myself is that I had a very difficult time laying people off. It was one of the things I regretted the most, and unfortunately, too many times I waited too long to make those cuts, and it had a horrible financial bearing on the business.
Mm.
And I guess through the years I learned that when things got ugly, you have to make some choices that are not pleasant.
Yeah. Brent, I'd love to hear from you what impact this mission statement and just Tom in general has had on your career, on your approach to business, and now that you're in leadership in Dudley, how you make decisions.
To be a landman, a field landman, there's a lot of luck involved. And I feel like I'm the benefactor of some really lucky chances, circumstances for me. And I remember the first time I met Tom, and this has been echoed by many different people within our company. He was when he was talking to you, he was talking to you, and you felt that he was engaged in his conversation. There was nobody below, being able to speak to Tom. He came to East Texas for a Christmas party. Me and my wife were sitting at a table, and he sat down and visited with us. And I was a nobody. He walked past all the crew chiefs. There just happened to be, we were the new people. There happened to be a seat next to us. And, that left a mark on me. And it really inspired me and other people in our company to say, you know what, I can do that. I want to be that. I want to have a company. I want to be responsible for these people. But then also, I want to do this for them and be able to communicate with them, be able to sit down and they can come to me. And I remember years later, flash forward, and I was interviewing for my employee opportunity with the company. Again, a lucky circumstance. I'd been exposed to those really big projects that Tom brought in the door because of his systems. And I gained a lot of experience, and I got an opportunity to be an employee of the company. And he asked me what I wanted to do, in 5 or 10 years. And I said, I want to own a brokerage company. And I remember that. I'll never forget it. But he inspired me to do that. And this mission statement, I recently pulled it up a couple of years ago ahead of one of our manager meetings. And, this is my first time to run the meeting. This is our annual meeting. And I pulled up one of Tom's old blue books. And the blue book was the report book that he would take to do all his demos to clients. And I kept a dozen of them when we moved offices, and I've still got them. But I pulled one up and I was just flipping through it. And then the inside cover was this old mission statement. And I didn't know when he wrote it or how old it was, but 2 years ago, reading through it, it hit home. It's at the core of what we are as a service organization and what's important to our company and what's still important to our company. And it's amazing that how spot on he was with how a company should be run and how you should respect people. And you're only as good as your people in our business. And it's a testament to the vision that he had for a quality company or a quality brokerage firm to be able to put this on paper and it stick for years. It's got to be 15, 20 years old at least. All those things are a big part of what makes our company successful, and other companies like us successful is that they've got these things at their core. And they can kind of stand the test of time and keep quality and service at the forefront and innovation at the forefront. To Tom's point earlier, things have changed so much. When he started, he was pulling books. When I started, I was filling out, forms and typewriting. And now, we're in the process of reprogramming our database that he built, 20 years ago into a modern platform where you can access it from your cell phone and, taking advantage of all the technology that's out there. And you can't stay relevant and you can't stay visible if you're not innovating. And, that one paragraph about we must experiment with new ideas is critical to my thinking, running the company now. And, hopefully the next guy will do the same. They take what I've done and Brandon and Steve have done and build on that. So I think there's just endless lessons from Tom, and that we all take, and the sense of urgency. I think urgency is in that mission statement twice. And that's a big deal. When someone calls us to do work, it's because they need it done. And there's always a sense of urgency, and we stress that, and he always did as well. It's a huge part of being a service company.
Well, Tom, obviously the impact that you've left, not just on the company that you started, but on the individuals that have touched that company, whether it be clients, employees, contract landmen, is really unsurmountable. And there are a lot of sacrifices that you went along the way. Some you've shared, some we almost just assume were implied, but it's really invaluable. And we're really grateful for the impact that you've left on everybody's life. If you had to give a piece of advice to a young landman starting in the industry, obviously things are different, but we all know that principles never change. What is the advice that you would give a young landman?
Honesty. I think hard work, contacts in the industry. I find this younger generation hidden behind their iPads and laptops and communicating with text messages, and I think that I think more personal contact is required. I think young people getting in the industry should get out and go to as many organizational meetings that they can, and shake hands with as many people as they can. I think it's invaluable that they do things like that. I hear that more and more people are more out of touch than in touch with their own organization. I would recommend that they get more involved.
And Tom nailed it. It's in the land profession, and really any profession. It's, if you're honest, you put in a good, hard, honest day's work, and you put yourself out there, you'll be successful. And that applies to really any career. The hard work part of it is a big deal. You may not be the smartest guy, but if you can outwork someone, you'll stay working.
Thank you for summing that up for me, Brent. That's exactly what I was trying.
Well, it's easy. You kind of teed it up, and I could roll it all into one thing. Especially for field landman, when the profession is so disconnected these days, in the sense of everybody's working from home. People are doing online records in the courthouse. No one can see that you're at the courthouse all day, every day. But, your product is everything, and your product shows how hard you're working. And those that really make it, especially the younger landmen, are the ones that there's no doubt that they're putting in their time, and they're hungry to learn, and they're asking the right questions, and engaging in the company and engaging in the project. Those are all big deals. Very important things.
Well, we greatly respect you, Tom. We appreciate being on the podcast with us for the land department. And hopefully we'll get you around again for your second podcast.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to sit down and chat with you, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tom. Man, you did great.
You did great.
You're an old pro, man.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
All right.
Thanks for listening to The Land Department. Check out our website in the show notes, or visit dudley-land.com to learn more about us.